Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping things before we begin. You should see a Q&A box directly on your screen where you can begin to submit your questions for today's presenters. Later today, you'll be sent a link to the on-demand recording, as well as a link to download the slides, plus a link to the IBM Tech Exchange community thread where you can connect directly with our experts. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to today's presenters.
Great,
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, everybody. I'm Brian Promise here with the IBM SevOne team, and really excited to have all of you join in today. I'm joined by Brendan Schimmel, who leads our product management team. And much like going to a Broadway musical or play where somebody on the named cast can't make it, playing the role of Rupert Gregory today is Brandon Hales. So Brandon, thanks for jumping in today. As I think about what you're going to be seeing inside of this webinar today, right? This march toward IBM SevOne 7. It's been a journey that we've been on, together as a team with our customers to drive in more capability and more value, into and through your organizations, right? And you'll begin to hear the value take place in around how we're focusing around providing more application-centric capabilities, around more multi-cloud capabilities, and to do more things with the insights that many of you have come to know of the value of SevOne, bringing around its performance management set of features. But as we go through this capability today, I want you to if you have any questions along the way, jump into the Q&A. I'll be managing the Q&A between the three of us. And making sure that you get the value out of this session that you're looking for. And I think with that, I will turn things over to Brendan and Brandon.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. Let me put those slides up. There should be full screen now. Like Brian said, what we're going to talk about today is essentially the launch of IBM 7.0, right? A journey that's been 2 years for us in the making about transitioning from where SevOne was to where SevOne needs to be to meet the market need. So when we look at what's driven us, the motivations behind why 7.0 or why we needed a new major version or what we wanted to define for that version is a lot of discussions with customers that we have on the call today, a lot of prospects, a lot of analysts, a lot of internal people on the team here, right, that have network engineering experience that know the pain of monitoring and managing modern networks. We know that businesses run on applications. Applications are dependent on networks to run. But we also hear about the challenges in making that so. So how can SevOne continue to meet that market need? And as you look at kind of a mix of external factors that make it difficult, and this is us kind of amalgamizing a lot of conversations we've had with a lot of you over the last year and a half, 2 years, is the movement of workloads to the cloud, the SaaSification of a lot of applications, the lack of people coming in the door that are coming in as network engineers that create this kind of labor shortage where they need more tooling, they need automation to do stuff. The networks have gotten more complex and dynamic, and as a result, you get this kind of fragmented visibility and control where you have an SD-WAN EMS to log into, you have an AWS console to go into, you have your own SNMP based stuff. Is how do you bring that kind of all together? So those challenges, and hearing them kind of led us to define the target for 7.0 as allowing it to become application-centric, hybrid cloud network visibility, and being able to take the insights that we generate within SevOne and turn those into actions. So if you think of application centricity as kind of defined for us, we think of people that are sitting at a help desk or a network operations center or what kind of inbounds come into them. It's typically there's an issue with an application. And how does that network engineer, network operations person turn around and ask an application question to a soup of network data that they've collected? Like that's a pretty hard challenge that we wanted to resolve it. And we started off looking at it and saying, look, we can do a lot of stuff with the data that we have. And frankly, we're not doing enough with it. So we challenged ourselves to look at, starting in our 6th release, of how can we take the data we have in Flow, NetFlow, IPFix, et cetera, and enrich that? Why can't we automatically know the BGP ASN that traffic came from? Why can't we know the country of origin, the country of destination from those flow records? Furthermore, instead of our users having to create the rules that say which application is which, hey, for the stuff that's out there, like the common SaaS applications, why don't we just auto detect those, fingerprint them? So we want to embed this intelligence. So you collect flow on day one, you know how much traffic's going to the UK. You can see Netflix traffic and break that out. And that just kind of happens naturally for you. So as you upgrade it up into here, and we went further saying, all right, they have that data. Well, how can they query it? How can they contort it? How can they represent it? Do we need, have little icons in there? Do we need to be able to put a new variable so they can ask questions or new filters? So all that kind of stuff leads up to 7.0. We have a SaaS application database that auto detects these applications. You have a BGP and ASN one, but now we look at going, wow, this could enable all sorts of things. And with 7.0 being able to support Kubernetes workloads and visibility into those containerized networks via eBPF that will convert that data into IPFix, gives us even extended visibility. So if you look at how it looked before, it's a bunch of IP addresses in your flow records. I don't know what those mean, but it'd be nice if we could categorize those, right? How much is going to which network provider? Furthermore, if you think of a lot of these companies that have applications that are hosted inside someone else's cloud, a lot of other tools you might just look at and go, all right, it goes to AWS. Well, don't a bunch of things go to AWS, right, friends? So how could we take it even further? This fingerprinting database will not only tell us that it's kind of Slack, it's going to this ASN, but it's also located inside of Amazon, and the country of origin is Ireland. So that level of resolution we thought was what we wanted to shoot for, and we hit it. So if we look in the previous releases of being able to look at the BGP and country of origin, so you can see the countries, the flags, and the ASNs that those are associated with, so you can understand how this traffic is being routed and flowed between source and destination. Being able to look at a summary of your network, looking at just a flow query right here, friends. And this is automatically going to categorize by the type of traffic and then the traffic that it is. So you can see social networks and then Instagram under there, and you can look at it over time. You can contort that into Sankey views. We really think this is just a very cool thing to see on day one when you light up a SevOne in your environment. Visibility you didn't have before, but it kind of allows you to really leak into some security use cases of being able to identify specific IP addresses or endpoints or services or countries that you don't expect to see traffic in. So we've seen this really level up the network engineer, making them a lot more relevant from a security standpoint, just because the context is there from a volumetric standpoint, looking at your metrics, but then also now from an application standpoint, looking at your flow, all within SevOne. So for those folks that were kind of over investing in DPIs where they really didn't need to because they needed this level of visibility, we're happy to get them there. And the database that we ship is extensible. So if there are internal things that you want to ship or add in there that are unique to you guys, we're looking at the top 5,000 SaaS applications. So think of WebEx, Box, browsing, Facebook, storage, Dropbox, Spotify, those types of things that we can automatically categorize. Where it gets further, and I'll pass it off to Brandon, is how we can now use the same capability in a Kubernetes workload cluster environment.
First time coming off mute. Sorry, Brendan. But we're working with a team from Red Hat who builds what they call the NetObserve product in OpenShift. And there's an open source component to that we're able to contribute. And we're able to, out of the box with 7.0, ingest all the additional fields and metadata that is coming out of that. So not only visibility into container networking, but back to this overall methodology of application context, application awareness. It's going to be automatically tagged coming into SevOne with the pod names, the pod namespaces, so you can understand what components of your application are doing the talking. If it's going outside of your network to reach services in the cloud, those will be automatically identified by SevOne, as Brendan showed. And it's really a one-click install from the OpenShift operator hub. So the onboarding experience couldn't be any easier.
So we're probably most excited, Brandon, for that last piece, that as Red Hat builds and develops that release cycle of us being able to get round trip time and latency on a per conversation level, right? This is just IPFix using the extension fields. Yep.
Yeah, correct. The nuance here is we've started to, in the open source version of this NetObserve, to capture round trip times, which we've not seen often in Flow. Maybe some SD-WAN providers are measuring that stuff. But in the container world, we didn't understand network latency from a TCP level. that's now in the flows, and that's been released in the open source version of this thing, and we anticipate that coming out in the next release of OpenShift. So if you're using the open source today, you already have this. If you're using OpenShift, your next upgrade will just enable the round trip times, and SevOne is already configured out of the box to receive that.
And it's important to stipulate here. We're saying like we're collecting eBPF. What ultimately is happening is eBPF is being converted into IPFix, and SevOne natively collects IPFix. So again, no real friction here. You upgrade, you get the databases for BGP and ASN. You upgrade, you get the SAS fingerprinting database. You upgrade, you're able to consume the Kubernetes fields that come in here. We found through conversations, and it's kind of a mixed bag. We have a large customer base of some network engineers that have a real anxiety about Kubernetes. I was one of them. It's just this black box that showed up, and an infrastructure team comes over and yells at me every once in a while. But now you kind of can break open that black box and provide some kind of value and visibility into there that they may not have from their level of being able to see some ineffective flows or find a very noisy pod or et cetera. So if we bring this all to kind of a close, go ahead, Brian.
Real quick, guys, a couple questions I'll say of context around this.
Yep.
One question is around, I'll say the data itself we're collecting here. Folks who have been used to working with SevOne, recognize the value of a data point coming into the system and being automatically baselined and to alert and everything else. Is this data that's coming in treated the same way?
So this is flow data, right? So we have flow alerting. It doesn't have, it's not 100% the same as the capabilities on metrics where you have baselines and standard deviations and things. Really powerful, but we do have a lot of capability in flow alerting. So you could set up, hey, if this field goes over X or Y, that could produce an alert.
Okay,
like
latency as an example.
Yep. Yeah. So like those fields come in, any field that's in the NetFlow record, like, and we create views that allow you to look at aggregated NetFlow, so you can get these really quick reportings, or you can go unaggregated and get raw. But it'd be the same as any flow record you're using today, the same capability. But when we look at,
go ahead. Oh, go ahead. I said, and the other bit of context here is really around the I'll say with eBPF, and I would say it as a whole around application centricity. What this means of not so much how someone works with APM tools, but just an overall positioning to help. How is SevOne different in what it's doing versus what someone might do inside of a APM tool?
Those two teams are working very closely together at IBM, right, Brian, to say, hey, how can we add value to somebody who is using or wants to be using both of these products, right? Instana, great at instrumenting your code at sort of a tracing level to say, hey, how long is the call of the database taking? Then I do some data analytics in my program. How long is that taking? Those internal timings are the realm of Instana. To some degree, the infrastructure management is in the realm of Instana. How much CPU is this pod using? Stuff like that. But then tying it back to how is the network impacting performance or contributing to overall user experience is something we can see in the flows. Traffic kind of planning in terms of like, hey, like I have a Kubernetes in Amazon and Azure. There's a lot of traffic crossing. It's causing me egress charges. Things like that would be a lot more visible from the network side in SevOne using this eBPF agent. And to tie it all together, we're saying, hey, we now have this common picture and context, right? Of like, hey, we were talking about the same pods, the same namespaces. We have this common view of different lens into the same applications, looking at the linkage to bring users seamlessly back and forth between Instana data and SevOne data is something we're actively pursuing right now.
Okay, so that's helpful. I think the focus of the two systems and then what they can do together makes perfect sense. One more drill down on that's come in on question around the containers is that is there visibility into OpenShift containers themselves for say generic performance metrics or just network data via flows? Can you give a distinction there?
Great question. We started from our heritage as network performance folks, and we're excited by this round trip time and the flow capabilities out of NetObserve. And as we said, Instana is great at getting that CPU, memory, metrics type of stuff covered in the Kubernetes world. If you're looking at SevOne to do that stuff, we've been considering it. We would love to have Prometheus support. We find that that is, not the most demanded thing, but certainly something we're thinking about and interested in.
Okay. Great.
Cool. Let me continue on here, Brian. So if we kind of summarize this application-driven analysis journey, we think of the person prior to 7.0 being presented a problem with Microsoft Teams. And as you think about what would you have done, and this is us probing a bunch of people of how would you have even like asked the question? Like assuming you weren't some expert that built the network and knew exactly where Teams was routing and on what VLAN, et cetera, right? It'd probably be kind of a meandering, anxiety-fraught inducing journey. And we sought to kind of change this and turn it on its head. And if there's an issue with Teams, you go into SevOne, you go into the Flow app profiles dropdown, you put in Teams. It'll bring back those flow records. You pivot those flow records to an infrastructure view, our performance metrics widget. It's going to surface the top contributing interfaces that saw Teams at that point in time. So you can begin that workflow with some semblance of targeting, right? And from those infrastructure links, you can look at maybe what is related to topologically, what has events, what has alerts, et cetera. And it feels really good to do. So example of me yesterday popping into our one of our coworkers' networks and asked 3 questions. What's up with Netflix, Instagram, and WebEx? And immediately I can get a breakdown of that traffic. You can see kind of what it is streaming versus social versus collaboration tools, if there's any alerts for the infrastructure that's running it. But for me to take that top right widget that says application traffic over time and use chaining, and for those who aren't aware of the SevOne with chaining, you take any of these widget visualizations, hit that plus icon, you can kind of pivot into a different view. So if you're looking at metrics and you want to see the applications on those metrics, you can pivot to Flow. We reverse that. So you can go from Flow to performance metrics. So from the right, what I'm actually showing is me determining the top contributing network interfaces that were supporting the applications at that point in time. And again, from there, you can deep dive in there. And what's really happening there is we're looking at flow records. Those flow records are tied to an interface that we are typically monitoring, and it can map together. So we can reasonably assume that at a point in time, we can say this application was best delivered by these interfaces that we've seen those flow records on. We understand that flows move around the entire network, right? This isn't going to capture everything, a point-to-point link across the way. People put flow on the edges of their network, et cetera. But we think it's a competent starting point. And it gets you started in an area to say, is it us? Are we contributing to the Teams problem? Does any of these links have errors? Like if I look over at the device that these links are on, are there any like CPU or memory issues? Is there a QSQ propped out? We just think this is a more effective way to do it, to be able to laser in and kind of help answer that question when an application problem shows up on the front door. Anything you want to add, Brandon?
You're good. Let's keep going.
Love putting you on the spot. Another piece of this, right, when we talk about that first slide is a pressure we've heard from our customers is all this stuff is moving to, AWS, Azure, GCP, et cetera. How do we get visibility there? So we made it a core component of our strategy of extending our visibility into the public cloud environment. So if you look at how people connect to clouds with SD-WAN vendors, we've had a strategy around that, but we really went hard to say we want to be able to support AWS and Microsoft Azure. So if we look at that journey, we've introduced Fortinet as an SD-WAN vendor. We've introduced VelaCloud as an SD-WAN vendor. We introduced AWS as a public cloud integration. And now in 7.0, we're happy to launch our general availability of our Azure monitoring solution. So expanded our monitoring coverage, all the out-of-the-box reports. The way we're doing it's super cool. We're going to dive into it in a heartbeat here. What we're doing uniquely with Azure is we're leveraging the Azure Data Plane API. So it's a new API that Microsoft had developed. We were one of the first to use it, us and Datadog. You can read about it in the blog post of all the gains we found in doing it. What does that mean to you as a customer, Brandon?
Well, it's about 2 things mainly. It's about the veracity of data. Some of these systems, the first generation of cloud monitoring, SD-WAN monitoring, had a lot of buffering and data could be delayed by 15 minutes. And that's not great. We're about near real-time performance management, as quick as we can get it. And the second piece is we want to do that at a cost that is reasonable, right? So both through our AWS integration and our Azure integration, we were able to break out of the mold that we saw other performance people doing, work with the vendors directly, work with their product teams and their engineering teams, and find better ways to extract the data at a lower cost to you guys. So if you had a classic kind of calling individual, metrics APIs in Azure or AWS, getting charged by the penny every single time, these types of systems are more streaming oriented, and the data is being pushed to us in a greater volume, so we can ingest it in a both more timely manner and a more cost-effective manner.
Yeah, so we really lucked out. Appreciate the work that Microsoft did with us. Really what we're supporting here on the top right, we had a private preview at our last release with virtual machines and virtual machine scale sets, helping us kind of prove out and validate our approach. And then I expanded this to include all the new ones you see up there of express routes, VPN gateways, express route gateways, storage, and load balancers. And when we build an integration with these plugins, these are plugins that ship with the NMS. They're there, you configure it, and be able to add in there. There's no additional collection you're going to actually deploy to be able to realize this. And we're going to give you these out-of-the-box reports built by our team. That's some best practices that get you started on day one. Again, our reporting framework is completely customizable. If you want to build your own reports, have at it. But we want to give you some powerful capability on the first day. So with load balancers, with express routes, virtual network gateways, multiple tabs in each one of these that kind of give you the full view of what you need into Azure. And if you summarize it, we do this automated onboarding. So once the plugin's enabled, we're going to add resources automatically into SevOne. We're going to take a lot of that metadata and we're going to group things automatically for you. So you can use those to drive queries, alertings, permissions, et cetera. But it's important to note that these are metrics being collected in SevOne. And the default value of any metric we collect in SevOne means you can do all the stuff you can do with any other metric. There's nothing special here because they're cloud metrics. If you want to have baselines, they're already there. Being able to run top end queries, fine. If you want to make alert policies out of there, easy. So all the natural things that would happen from an S&MP based metric, you're going to get that same feature parity when you're talking about Azure monitoring. So really excited how this came along. While we're continuing to add new services, et cetera, and round out some of our existing capabilities, we also added the ability to ingest those coordinates that we'd see in metadata. And we think that's cool because it allows you to leverage them to build some of these live maps within SevOne. So you can kind of pin them right where they are in the world and kind of got a view of all the resources and groups that are in those locations. I even bake that into a report if you want, and have a drill down so you can kind of have a view of, all right, here are my nodes in the US. Here's a list of them because I'm chaining from this view into a metadata widget, et cetera. And it's important, as 7.0 is really about our Azure launch in here. It's really about the journey on public cloud monitoring. So at the end of this, we have full support for everything you see here in AWS and Microsoft Azure. Very similar approaches in terms of plugins, in terms of cost reduction, the way we're going about it with the vendors, out-of-the-box capability, metadata ingestion, automatically group it, thoughtful onboarding, et cetera. So on the SD-WAN side of the house in 7.0, for those that are aware, VMware had made an acquisition around VeloCloud. They've since changed the name back to VeloCloud from VMware SD-WAN. So we've supported that with you guys. But we also introduced QoE scores. I think it's pretty cool of being able to distill down really the quality of experience, right, and bring those visibilities in. So that means we've updated the out-of-the-box reports that we send out with the release, and we've added some new CPU and memory indicators. So continually, as you think of that fragmented visibility and control problem I talked about on the second slide or third slide, we're going to continue to say, all right, instead of having to go to a VeloCloud EMS and then go into CloudWatch and then go into a different system to look at your infrastructure, is how can we bring that all into kind of one view and data insight, but then normalize it, right? They're all going to be the same device object indicator hierarchy. They're all going to have the same feature parity in terms of reporting and visualization. And you can tell some really cool stories across your entire infrastructure, public, private, and the connectivity pieces between them. So with VeloCloud, it's important to remember our support for SD-WAN monitoring right now. It's Cisco Versa, VeloCloud, and Fortinet. And the team is planning on looking how to bring in Aruba and Prisma from Palo Alto into the portfolio. So we've added this new collection capabilities across the board. We've embedded a lot of intelligence into the back end to derive more insights on day one without having to really click through them. It's how can you generate additional insights within our UI? So really our SevOne user interface, data insight, is our modern UI that we continue to evolve. I'm in love with the thing. And really what we're most in love with is bringing up a long overdue feature, a beloved feature from our former UI, instant graphs. Instant graphs to us and a lot of our SevOne users is the place you go real quick to get an answer. When you don't have an opinion, you don't want to create a report, you don't want to think about which visualization style, you need lines on a graph and you need them quickly. So the design intent behind this was, how do we create a console that anybody can have access to, that can as quickly as possible get a query on that screen. And once it's there, allow them to contort it, split it, move it, etc., so they can understand it. So what's important to note up here is there's a split by option at the top. And this could be a grid or a list view. So you can change this so it's big wide widgets, or you can turn it into a grid. But if a query that you throw up there has differing indicator types, or has multiple devices, or has different units of measure, that looks really bad on one widget. And maybe you want to split it up to see if it's different. So you can just automatically split these by indicator type, by device, by unit type, and we're going to continue to move on to that. So real quick, you can kind of parse through it and analyze in here. But once you're done, there was a feature in our older UI called detach, and that would allow you to create a report from one of these things. We introduced something that we think is better, and it's called stash. At the top of these widgets, you'll see a little shopping cart, and that shopping cart allows you to kind of grab and go. You can take any one of these visualizations, widgets, if you will, and the query behind them with you. So you put it in your cart, it shows up in your stash, and then you can use that across data insight. You can just save them there, or you can, put them on a new report without having to recreate that widget and recreate that query. It's kind of like copying and pasting it around. Where I found it beneficial, as I was troubleshooting some stuff in our infrastructure, is I don't really know the answer yet. And as things look interesting, it's like when I'm shopping on Amazon. I just throw it in the cart. Maybe I'll buy it, but at least I know there's a place it's going to live. I won't lose it. And I can clear it out if I don't want it, but at least I don't have to worry about opening 17 browser tabs and explore, and explore each one of those and get lost. So adding it to your stash, it's personal to you when you log in. You can see it all in a row as tiny little widgets. So this is me expanding a slide out here on the right side. And then you can clear your stash out. You can unstash all of them, which will just put the widgets on the current page you're on in whatever report, or you can delete them individually. So it's a really cool way to kind of solve for building reports faster. But selfishly, the value I find in it is being able to aid in that troubleshooting journey when you don't care about really anything except finding the answer, reducing an outage. So if you can take those with you and say, I don't want to build the report, but I want to show Brandon this weird drop on Salesforce's time for downloading. It got really better. I don't know why. I shouldn't have to create a report that's going to live forever and gum up everybody else's experience when I can just kind of stash that, take a screenshot, and show it to them. So really excited how Stash came in. Really excited about instant graphs. Brandon, I know instant graphs is near and dear to your heart.
It was my favorite page, and I came into this project as a big skeptic. I'm like, hey, can we really come to DI and make a better experience than instant graphs? It's got 3 drop downs, guys. There's nothing you could take away. It's just perfect. And Matt Sweet and the team worked on this really, really hard, and they came up with a design. I'm like, I don't know, guys. This is a lot of functionality. The original was better. And we got to the end here, and all this stuff about how much stuff you can quickly query, and you see a diversity of data here all in one shot, and the ability to split it and stash it and then tell my own story based off of cherry picking things out of here. I'm the biggest fan. I was a skeptic. I've been through this whole journey, and this is the best instant graphs we ever had. So I'm delighted for you guys to get a hold of it and tell us what you think.
I'm really excited mostly for our managed service provider customers as well, who in a lot of even deployments where they kind of have this guarded rule of who can create reports in the system, it creates some friction and some pain and some overhead. So if everything's a report in the system, it's kind of difficult for everybody to get value without annoying other people to build reports for them. Instant Graphs kind of gives you that gray area where feel free, you can do your visualization. You may never look at this query ever again. It shouldn't have to be a report, right? So allowing users to have that kind of functionality without giving them the weight of report creation responsibilities, I think is a great middle ground in there. And when we look at Stash, very excited to see how that comes out. We're continuing to round this thing out in 7.1 and on. Device Manager in Data Insight. So the Device Manager was moved over a few releases ago, but we've continued to add functionality in here where you can search, sort, filter, look at metadata, all the kind of stuff you're used to. We've added alert status in here. We've added a summarized number of devices so you can see, hey, how many devices do I have that are under management in a quick, simple way. We've now added the ability to add, import, and edit devices in here. And we're starting off with the SNMP, ICMP, and WMI plugins, right, to see how this looks and feels with people adding devices, making a quick change. Hey, we want to change this SNMP credential. I want to modify this. And really, we don't think you should have to go to kind of the NMS page to kind of edit these things. It's how do we bring more functionality into data insights so your entire SevOne experience can kind of remain in here. So Device Manager continues to move on. Individually with certain widgets in Data Insight, we've made some changes to our topology widget. So by default now, it's overlaid with alert status. The links have labels. You have the alert count. There's an interactive legend to filter stuff. We've taken the canvas controls to give you flexibility to be able to contort this visualization as you see fit. The variable support, if you were to chain this visualization, we'll look at the entire graph, and then if you click on it, you'll see our individual alerts. So I think this is helpful when you're saying there's an issue with Chicago Edge 01 here I'm showing, being able to look at it topologically, look at all the alerts for surrounding devices and try to figure out if there's some causality or dependencies here. But these links as well, being able to see what the links are and how they're derived. There's a tooltip now that you can look at, and it'll tell you how we found this relationship between these devices. It'll give you the device and object status with a color bubble. And then you can drive report linking off of this. So that rule-based report linking that you can click on this interface and look at just an interface summary for that interface is now all supported on this topology visualization. So that's the new default on the network topology widget. Another piece we wanted to bring in, if you think of the device manager, it really allowed somebody to look at all the metadata in kind of one view for all their devices. How do we create that same kind of almost object manager style view, or see a list of all the objects on a device in SevOne? Metadata widget is your place to do that. It's a tabular form to look at this, but we added in all of the columns that would be relevant really for objects. If you think of the object group manager or object manager in the legacy UI, you can see we've added object description, type, ID, subtype, plugin, first seen, last seen date, and you can filter and sort by these. So without really knowing a lot about device, I can pop into a summary, go over to the objects tab, see a list of all the objects that are on there, kind of who they are and what they are, all within Data Insight. So we love that this is taking more functionality into the modern UI that allows you to stay there and see more about it. And then again, this is just helpful being able to kind of search, sort, count, and identify things. When we look at the insights that we've generated, being able to put the back end databases in there, be able to surface that value visually on the front side, be able to increase how people can, really quickly ad hoc troubleshoot in here, supplement that with metadata, understand the relationships between here. We're trying to make the normal SevOne user that launches 7.0, they don't have to do much configuring in the back end. SevOne's going to provide a lot of that insight on the front end for you, right? Once you have those insights, Brian, what do you do with those?
Well, I said one of the things we've added into the IBM SevOne offering, right, is a low code, no code engine. For those who have been following that the activity in this space, IBM acquired a company named Pliant here back in early spring, back in March. The Pliant capability of low code, no code engine, along with a set of pre-built workflow templates, right, can enable organizations to get a blueprint for how they can begin to take sets of automated actions. For example, seeing a specific QoS alerts coming across and driving remediation of those areas to making it easier to change settings across a network. So a whole range of different use cases that can run across that we have available. But in addition to that, users have the ability to then build their own automation workflows and/or take automations they already have and reuse them. Things that are built in Ansible and Chef, as an example, right, and bring those in and then tie them across their entire infrastructure. If the building blocks that are come with the system, if they don't have your current support device, much like the SNMP new device support we have in SevOne, right? This ability, if we don't have support for the APIs for a certain device or a type of application you want to get data from, there's a 15-day SLA that comes along that side, and really as an ability for folks to help normalize the automation process that you have within your organization, to reuse the automations that you already have and augment them, and then to provide a level of governance, having a single system that everyone can have access to this level of automation. Just brings that extended value, right, to being able to take actions upon the insights that SevOne brings.
Yeah, and there's sorts of stuff that people are doing with this, Brian. It's like taking alerts and sending them as a webhook to a Slack channel, right? And then being able to kind of codify what that alert looks like, so somebody can just click on it in Slack and get right into data insights. So the customization aspect, I think, is great. But then for people that are typically piles of scripts hiding in a corner under a senior engineer's desk, of being able to kind of democratize some of these workflows, so people can look and say, all right, well, SevOne can't do that, but I can take the SevOne data and do this, right? So the things that people have been able to do with this is kind of fascinating, alarming, and exciting, right? In that order of being able to leverage the SevOne data and get it out there. And really for SevOne's, from a design standpoint, really an open platform, if you were to speak of that, with APIs, our SevOne data pump letting you get data out, because we know that our data mixed with other stuff can be a lot more powerful than just alone, right? So super excited about that. Anything else you want to add, Bri?
No, one thing that I've seen when teams have got their hands on some of this automation capability is where the imagination begins to take hold, right? That one of the workflows that we have in the I'll say the sample workflows we have up in IBM Community, is how to go grab geocoordinate data to pop into SevOne. And as we were showing it to one user, they looked and go, hey, wait a second, I can tap into this other geocoordinate I have for a bunch of equipment I know is moving all the time, right? So they're able to easily tap in and be able to then visualize where the devices they're trying to monitor, where they are. But before, if they were just living in that data was living separate and not being able to tie it in, visualize it inside of SevOne. So it just gives just that richer level of capability and customization that just bring more value.
Yeah, to think that we would find a way to kind of dynamically monitor the location of a ship or a spacecraft, right? That's difficult for a network performance management tool, but being able to kind of leverage this and say, hey, we'll just continually update it from this system that already knows about it, this source of truth, et cetera. So, Brian, how do people get this extended value through the rapid network automation?
Yeah, so the capability of this, if you're an existing SevOne NPM user, you can trade up to an offering known as SevOne Automated Network Observability. The trip is available to every customer that is out there, and then from there, you get with that piece, you actually get 10 workflows with the entire engine, and then you can of course in this almost in the same way that you expand capability with SevOne by buying more devices when it comes to these workflows, you can extend more value by actually licensing more workflows you put into production.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the things we continue to evolve behind the scenes that are less transparent, but for some of our administrators that are on the call that care about this stuff deeply, a lot of innovations in the last year and a half. So kudos to the engineering team for doing the work, modifying OSs, making changes, trying to find every single way that makes the product more easier to consume, upgrade, and leverage in there. And I'll let you kind of speak to it, Brandon, as our chief architect.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. We see the headlines here: more secure, easier to upgrade, quicker to scale. All those achieved in some way via our partnership with Red Hat and getting onto a RHEL base, or pivoting to delivering the application via containers. But to break down each one of these, more secure, we've done a lot to remove reliance on the root user. First off, everything's in a container. A few things do really require a low-level network privilege, but a lot of things that didn't are now just running as a normal user. We've reduced the attack surface, closed some ports by kind of consolidating responsibility for different tasks. And as I said, Red Hat-based containers and Red Hat-based base OS is something that's going to give us just that security patch cadence for years to come, right? I think this thing lives to like 2029. before we would have to go through any major heartburn to get CVEs out on a frequent cadence as we're committed to. As far as upgrades, this is my own experience, right? Like I have a tiny cluster, but I can upgrade that guy to a new build in the 7 train in about 90 seconds because I'm just stopping a container, spinning up a new version of the container, and that's really going to create less disruption and hopefully incentivize you guys to have shorter change windows, less risk, and take these upgrades more often because you see from Brendan's part of the presentation, like we have capabilities coming out all the time. We just keep building this Appleware multi-cloud capabilities. And it seems from the questions, some folks are excited to consume that. But if we can make those upgrades really, really speedy, that reduces your barrier. And then on scaling, we changed kind of the APIs around adding things to the cluster. So first off, it's automatable. It's very easy to use the same APIs that we use to create clusters. If you're an MSP world and you need to build a cluster every day as a new customer's onboarded, or you're just adding capacity to an existing cluster, that can be all automated, and it's really a lot faster and recoverable versus the previous method. So we're excited to have quicker scaling via new APIs.
Yeah, most excited about was the challenge we gave in talking to a lot of our customers, right? A lot of financial customers we have, a lot of banks. Adopting the upgrades, it's just too difficult for them in terms of the number of change windows they're allowed per year, and then the risk that's associated with them. So the challenge to the engineering team was, how do you make that go away? And taking what could be a multiple day kind of upgrade with all that risk, we've tried to say, all right, let's do it here. Let's see how tiny we can get it down. So we expect those upgrade times in the 7.0 training going forward to be significantly reduced. So people can continue to upgrade the features of functionality. There's nothing more upsetting to talk to a customer and say, they have an issue. And it's like, well, we fixed that a year ago, and they just haven't had the chance to upgrade to it yet. So we owe you guys an answer on how to make that easier for you. And this is our response in there. As we look at the next kind of few months, more than excited to get this thing out. I really appreciate all the help from my team and product, the design teams and engineering, QA, the sales teams, to help us really build this thing, right? It's been a 2-year journey for us to kind of pick a target, bring our customers with there to help them get to this application-centric network observability use case. Over the course of the summer, I want you guys to make sure you're in our community page on IBM.com. All right, following the IBM SevOne LinkedIn page, because we know there's a ton of stuff we put in this product that we even talk about today, that we want to be able to push out little tiny videos, little nuggets that explain these features and functions so you can kind of consume them easier instead of kind of killing you guys with hour-long demos, is being able to look at those. But for our customers on there, ask your salespeople if you want a demo of SevOne 7. More than excited to show it off to you guys. Get down into the weeds, figure out how it can help you guys, really take it to the next level in terms of network observability. We're excited what's coming in the future of being able to use even more kind of the insights that we've generated of what we can do with them on the front side in the UI. All right, generatively, it's very excited for us to think of the possibilities that are in there, but we can go a million ways. We'd love to talk to the customers and figure out what can actually solve real problems for them. So I would pause there and give it back to you, Brian.
I would say I just have one real last, I'll call it the drum roll question, really do a little drum roll on my desk. All right. When is this available?
D-Day, June 6th, 2024. So tomorrow. Tomorrow we launch. I'm sorry, I thought that was on the first slide. So yeah, June 6th, SevOne 7.0 tomorrow.
It's really great news. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So all ready for everyone, folks to access tomorrow, and looking forward to folks getting their hands on that piece. One question coming in is just around the upgradability of those going from 6 to 7. Any thoughts around how folks should approach that?
You know what, Brian? That's something we test every day in QA, and we're constantly upgrading clusters because we know, like, if this goes wrong, it's egg on our face. It's a big pain for you guys. And so I personally did an upgrade a little bit in advance of this release going out. So we've shipped the final bits. They'll be going live tomorrow. And I upgraded a few weeks ago, right? And I ran into 3 upgrade issues. I was like, oh, so frustrating. And I went back to engineering. I'm like, guys, I found 3 issues. I'm so smart. You guys really missed it, right? And it turns out they had all been fixed the previous day, right? So the team did more testing than we've ever done. I could go into the weeds about our whole new testing methodology on this thing, but they're so great that the issues that I encountered were already fixed before I even was able to report them.
Awesome.
All right. Well, the folks that thanks for joining in live today to the session. For those who came in recorded, thanks for watching the content, and looking forward to all of you, being able to drive the value that the team has been spending effort in, based on your feedback and requirements that have built IBM SevOne. So Brendan, thanks for jumping in, and folks, if there aren't any more questions coming out there, we'll sign off.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody.